All right. Hey, everybody. No one in here yet. All right. Hello? Hey, everybody. No one in here yet. All right. Hello? Hey, everybody. No one in here yet. All right. Hello? Hey, everybody. No one in here yet. I actually have to close out my other one. Hello, I see someone's viewing. I have my other window open, so it's screwing things up. There we go. And I welcome anyone to join. If anyone wants to join in too, tweet me if you've got a podcast. And what I will do is I will invite you in to join the conversation. That's the way I'm going to run this and make sure that we get as much fun, as many conversations happening here as possible. So as you're doing this, if you could tweet me, and I'm going to keep an eye on that conversation on Twitter. I've got that kind of up on the side here, and ask any questions along the way there. If anyone wants to actually join with me, Kristen, if you actually want to join in, I am more than happy to have you. And maybe you can play a little bit of a role of moderator, because I know you kind of know some of the stuff that I've gone through. But if you're interested, more than happy to do that. Let me see. I'm going to invite you, actually. Kristen Carlos. I'm going to send you an invite, and we're going to spread the word on this, and we'll just have a candid conversation about it, because I think you have read the article I wrote, so you can probably speak better to it. So Meerkat was not working today. Meerkat was being very funny, which is frustrating. Meerkat has been something I've really enjoyed using, but clearly has not been friendly with me today. So because Meerkat has not been friendly, I have taken this to a hangout on air. And this is a good way to talk about podcasting in a different platform. And thank you. It looks like Matt is going to stream it. Let me see. Let me know when it's up. So let's see. I can't see viewers. I don't know if hang on air if anyone's in here or not. So if someone could tweet me on Twitter, see Barrows, let me know you're here. But I'm going to start anyways. I'll pull up my. Yes, that's a great call. I'll pull up Meerkat there, and. So this is kind of a double whammy. We got a Meerkat going on because Matt is pulling it on Meerkat because my Meerkat has decided not to work. And then what we're going to do here, we're going to talk a little bit about podcasting. This is what is normally done on Meerkat, at Meerkat, and not working today. So what we're going to go ahead and do, let me pull up questions. I will see you all. It'll be kind of like... it'll be you'll see yourself out of it. Okay, great. So I am here today a little bit to talk about today's topic, which is how to start a podcast. And starting a podcast is something that has been definitely a learning experience for me. So when I talk about starting a podcast, I came in it with the approach of let's have a good strategy. Let's go in and make sure that we are on point. We know the direction we're going, and with the podcast, what is it going to be? What is its purpose going to be? Who is the audience? And here's the thing that I've learned with starting a podcast. To start a podcast,
So this is kind of a double whammy.
whoa, let's lower. Okay. So I want to have a niche audience. And the reason I target a niche audience, and this is really important, is I realize there's a wealth, and I mean a wealth of podcasts out there. And I know not as many as blogs, because blogs, what is it, 4 million, whatever the number that the statistic everyone throws out is, it's just huge number that I blows my mind. But there's still a lot of podcasts, and there's a lot of very general podcasts. So my belief, and again, this is my belief, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm some expert on the topic. I don't believe that anyone is an expert on this. But I'm seeing that the numbers are showing that with all the general podcasts out there, you need to really target who you want to speak to. So for me in particular, I target people in social who are interested in learning about other people who do social, and that was my focus. That was the way that I was going to go about it. Now, here's the deal, and this is really, really important. I have found that I have a very engaged, excited audience. They're really connected to me. Just launched an ambassador program. There's a lot going on. But when it comes down to it, the people who are doing podcasts right are doing it in that manner that they are constantly hitting their audiences. They're listening to their audiences. They're consistent. So going in with a plan is going to help you do that. Now, going with a plan is writing things down, as far as I'm concerned. Now, this is, you could be a pen and paper person, you could be a digital person, I don't care. But go in there, have a map out of who's going to be, who you're scheduling with, who you're talking to, when are you having them on, and it's going to keep you on track. That Google Calendar, whether you're using apps like Calendly or things along those lines, it goes a really long way, because what's going to happen is you're going to keep yourself completely on track. And I'm sorry, I got a message. Oh, sorry, not a message for, it's a different message. Anyways, so here's the deal. When you look at podcasting, a few things you need to do. You start with the plan, as we discussed. Plan is fantastic, it's good. But in going forward with said plan, a few things you're going to want to do. Develop in that plan. How often do we post? And in the beginning, you may want to make sure you got to be on schedule with that, because you're going to get a chance to be on the new and noteworthy. New and noteworthy really is really important to get on, because it gets you a lot of extra visibility. 2, are you going to have a social presence? I believe in a social presence. It's work, it's effort. You know, certainly have to take time in. But I mean, I could show you on my screen here. I'm going to show you on my screen just an example of one thing that I do, which I think is extremely important, and I cannot express enough how important it is. I am constantly using tools like this this is Tweetbot. Actually, if you look at this screen, and if I go to my entire screen here, and you look at my TweetDeck is where I'm actually managing, in particular, my social media ambassadors. So as you can see, I've got all these things going on. My social media ambassadors program that I'm doing is live here. I can go in here and say, hey, I want to support one of my social media ambassadors. Let me retweet this. I'll tweet something, retweet. I happen to have already read that, so I know it's awesome. Otherwise, I wouldn't have just retweeted it. But this social media focus is really important. So it's a core part of my strategy. I believe in it, especially because if you talk about some of the things that are happening, you know, like, for example, the opportunity to be in the Shorty Awards, or things along those lines, that social media presence is going to be important. You're going to want to be able to go in and say, hey, look at all the stuff that's happening. So that's one thing I would highly recommend. Let's get Meerkat back up here, because I want to make sure I'm still looking at what people are saying there. So that's another part of it. Do you have a social presence or not? Do you have time to manage it? If you don't have time to manage it, focus on the quality of the podcast at first, because the quality of the podcast is essential. Other things you want to prepare for. Audio equipment. What are you using to record? You can't afford, I'm doing this off the board of a mic, which is off the board of a computer, which is totally fine. But if I'm actually doing this as a podcast, I would have my Blue Yeti microphone. There's plenty of valuable microphones. You don't need to use a Blue Yeti specifically, but that one's really good. It's top notch. It's really good quality. So it adds a real value to what you're doing. And the audio quality is really important because even when you record, actually, you have to think about the fact that your audience is hearing this. They're not seeing it. So if they're on the go and they're doing all these things, they need to be aware of what you're actually saying crisply, clearly. Now, this same thing goes in mind for your audience in terms of the guests that you may have on. Now, that brings up a great question: is when you're talking about strategy, what is your format? Are you a two-person show they're recording by one mic? Are you talking to other people? I am my particular podcast and talking to a lot of people. So because I'm talking to a variety of people and they're all over the world, I use Skype. I use a tool called Call Recorder. So I use a variety of tools that I find to be really beneficial and help me spread the word about what's happening. And a lot of the tools that I'm using are in particular important because if I didn't have something like Call Recorder, which records my Skype conversations, how else would I do this? I could use a Google Hangout. I'll be honest with you, Google Hangouts have been hit or miss. When I've heard podcasts that are recorded by a Google Hangout, there's Blog Talk Radio, which I know Cheval uses, and he's a fan of. I'm not the biggest fan of it personally. I'd rather do all this editing myself, which I know you can do there, but I believe a lot of people are using it to just kind of record straight up. And then put it out there. The other thing is, are you going to have intro music? Are you going to have these sort of things? As I'm bringing all this up, you're kind of getting the idea that, holy crap, there's a lot of things to think about. Now, once you've got the plan to go and launch, I actually highly suggest you go in with a few episodes. So have a plan to go in with more than one episode ready to go. Have a plan to continue the quality of the broadcast and keep it going. Keep the conversation happening. If you are not doing that, you're going to be in trouble because what's going to occur is you're going to hit a relapse or you're going to stop podcasting. And one, you're not going to get a new and noteworthy. But two, you're going to lose your audience because say, well, is this person really invested? And that's the question. Are you invested? So I want to talk about one last thing before leaving strategy, which is mission/purpose, and I want to talk in more depth. What are you trying to accomplish? Fanzo was talking about this today on Facebook. And what are you trying to accomplish? Why are you doing a podcast? Is it for personal gain? Do you want to help someone? My viewpoint is you should be able to do at least two things, which is you should be able to provide entertainment value, and you should be able to not just provide entertainment value, but provide valuable content. So what you're doing should have meaning. What you're doing should have a purpose beyond you. I get it if you want to have a podcast because you want to build your digital identity and you're helping this is going to help do that. It is. It is going to do that. I don't debate that it's important, and it's helped me. I'm first to say the podcast has definitely helped my ability to get out there and connect with more people. But that's not the reason I do it. I do it because I think it's great to tell stories. I think Why Social in particular gets people to get to know people who they may not know otherwise. I cite the most recent episode with Alexander Scheiner, that when that occurred, I mean, it was a very meaningful episode for me, but it's someone people don't necessarily know. Now, my next one's got someone who's up for a Shorty Award, and then after that, I've got some really fantastic folks coming on who are really well known. Ted Coyne's going to be on. I mean, so it's a nice mix, but all these people provide value. That's the thing. Everyone I'm bringing on is telling a story that's going to provide value to someone. So think about that. Now, okay, once you've launched, if you've got this social identity, if you've got this podcast, how much time are you taking? Make sure you allocate 2 to 3 hours, because say you have a half-hour podcast, you're going to want to edit, you're going to want to make marketing materials for it. I mean, if you really want to hit a home run with your podcast, you got to go put stuff out there. People have to see you. So you want to have maybe a Twitter graphic, a Facebook graphic. You want to get photos of the people who are coming on the podcast so you can make some nice images. All these things go a really long way in getting the podcast out there. Believe it or not everyone's just going to go on iTunes and find you. And I know some people seem to think that that's how it's going to work, but it's not how it's going to work. And I would love to think it's easy to get yourself out there, and love to tell you that, but it's not. And it takes a ton of effort. So give yourself the time that's necessary. I mean, I'll tell you, and some people kind of gawk at me when I say this, but I put about 5 hours in per episode for mine. I mean, after this is over, actually, the first thing I'm doing is editing a podcast for tomorrow. It's probably going to take me, because I have to listen to the whole episode. And this is important, actually. Think about this in your time frame. You want to listen to the whole episode because you want to make sure there's no major audio errors, no major issues. You want to make sure there's nothing that's screwing it up, that's going to disrupt people. The other thing you're going to need to do in doing this is make sure that you feel it's up to the quality that you need. Don't be afraid to say, hey, we need to re-record to someone. And early on, you don't want to have to do that. But the reality is you need to have a standard of quality. And I'm going to stress that more than anything. Mark Babbitt, who's the CEO of U-Turn, did an episode with him. The episode that actually aired was the second one that we recorded. And I actually asked the CEO of U-Turn, hey, can we re-record this? And I have stressed the value and importance of that because, quite frankly, if I didn't do that, you would not have got a quality episode because the audio issues with it were really glaring, and they came in the post. And I wish I knew what caused them. I don't, but yeah. And then there's this time for audio mixing, adding theme music. I have theme music. Not everyone does, but I recommend it. Get someone to do that. You got to pick a service out. So got to take the time to upload to a service like Libsyn. Libsyn's the one that I because of that. But there's a lot of great services out there. There's Blog Talk Radio, SoundCloud, so many to name. So go ahead and do that. Now, your podcast is out there at some point. Once your podcast is out there, because you were prepared, you've got these marketing materials. So you've got these great graphics you could share, etc. But you don't want to stop after the first share and say, okay, people know about it. You got to keep sharing. And this is where social comes in. The people who are interested in your podcast may not be on social, you may not think, but there's people on social for every topic possible. I have a podcast about social, so it's easy for me to know that people are going to want to listen on social, but there's a ton of other topics that you can hit. The right hashtags are everything. And going in, again, you're investing a lot of your time. You have to be into this. You have to love what you're doing and who you're talking to. Make no mistake, you meet amazing people having a podcast, but there's a factor here that once you've got going that people don't think about, which is, how do I keep getting guests? If you're going to be a show with guests, it takes time. I would argue I spend more time saying, hey, did you see that email, by the way? Just a reminder. And then I do actually setting up the time that we're going to go and record. And that's frustrating. People don't want to hear that, but it's true, especially when you get going. And eventually, if you're an influencer, or I know. I mean, obviously, someone like Ted Rubin, Brian Fanzo, Brian Kramer, these people have no problem getting yeses probably. But I could tell you, if you show yourself as organized, as you have a plan, people are going to jump in. And let's see if we got anyone on Meerkat, by the way, as we do this. People are going to jump in, and they're going to say, oh, I want to be on your show, because they're going to see that you're organized. The organization factor is huge. No matter who that person is, no matter, I don't care. They want to see that you know what the hell you're talking about, that you are going to be on point, that you're going to be delivering quality. They want to know that they are not wasting their time. Big or small, your podcast can matter. Point I would make is, I mean, I've got another conversation set up with Gary Vee's team in May, the little podcast that could maybe, but they're willing to talk to me and see what's happening and see if there's an interest, and I'm excited about that. But it's taking time and effort. I mean, Kristen Cardos can vouch for this, but it's taken me, I think, 6 months of talking just to get to the fact where they're listening to an email, a freaking email, so it's a lot of effort. And I'm really proud, I think, to say that it does work. No matter how small you are, you can make people listen to you. And you come in with a plan. I will share a document with all of you, so bear with me here. I'll talk through. But I have a document that is immensely powerful for me personally. And that document is my scheduling document. And in particular, the important thing about this document that you need to know, and this is not a perfect doc in any way, but it's a pretty powerful doc. I am going to bring it up for you right now, so bear with me. This is a scheduling doc that I use, and I think you will find some value out of it because you can kind of see how I arrange things. The NAs, by the way, on this are there because when I initially did this doc, I didn't have a record track date, so this record date is being refilled in because for most of these I had not had the record date period in, but release date was on there. But you could see blog links, etc., who's coming up. I mean, I can go through here and you can kind of see some people coming up, you know, Melanie Berger coming up, that's what I'm editing. Britt is going to be on, Ted Coyne, you know, so this doc keeps me organized. And here you can see I've got scheduled recording dates. I know I'm talking about Britt on 4/23, Ted on 4/22. Release date is semi-set, and this offers some real immense value to me because what I'm able to do is go back and say, okay, so what's my plan? What is my plan, and how's it going? The Pirate Guy I have to update, I should say, because Pirate Guy is there's this guy who has a fantastic podcast, and it's all about and I never added his name back in, but it's all about the history of pirating, and it blew my mind. And he does a great job on social with it. So I think when I threw him in, I said Pirate Guy, but he's more than Pirate Guy. He's just a genuinely good guy, and I was really excited to have him on. What's a good length of time to start with? So I'm going to try and take some questions. Yeah, a good length. Okay, so there's a lot of debate about the length of time by which you should talk, because what's interesting to me, and this fascinates me, is to me it's about the quality of your podcast. You know, if you've got a good podcast and you're doing good work, what's going to occur is people are going to listen. They're saying the ideal time right now is 25 to 30 minutes. I'm going to tell you right now, my podcast has gone over that. And it's gone over that multiple times, and I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem with that because people are still listening. So the other thing is you have to listen to your audience. If you listen to your audience, you're going to learn how people you're listening to how people are taking in the podcast and how they're actually enjoying the podcast. And you can ask them directly. I give out the email for the podcast on a daily basis. I say, hey, give me some feedback at yisocial@gmail.com. I want to hear what you like and what you don't like. I've made changes because of feedback people gave me. Some of the other questions that came in and suggestions for things to talk about. Let's see. You know, how to promote. We talked about it a little bit. Acquiring guests, strategy behind acquiring guests. Well, look, the big way that I have said about acquiring guests is go ahead and literally start with a tweet. Start with a tweet. Don't be afraid to ask. You know the biggest mistake that people have? They're afraid to ask. They're afraid to say, hey, what can I do to get you on the podcast? Or, hey, would you be interested in coming on the podcast? Look, I asked Guy Kawasaki, flat out asked him, hey, would you like to come on the podcast? I got a response a few days later. Sure, send me an email. Okay, that's all it took. And I have been told no a grand total of 2 times, and that's by the same person. So I was a little persistent, got told no, that's fine. Gary Vee never told me officially no. He said not now, and I was persistent. And again, it's still on course as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to end up getting him, and sometime this summer probably. So you're going to get told no. People are not always going to say yes to you, but be aware that you can't be afraid of hearing the word no. I think this goes to something beyond podcasting, which is not being afraid of failure. Don't be afraid to say, that you didn't always succeed. You'll learn more from failure than anything else. So you'll learn from that. The other cool thing I did recently was start a social media ambassadors program, which is pretty cool, which is going to really help from a promotional standpoint of the podcast. And I'm really excited about that. By the way, I think this is weird to do, but I think it's fun to, it's me and me. How fun is that? It's like picture-in-picture barrows. That's creepy in a way, actually. But so I think in the end, the starting a podcast, and this is very, again, we could go in depth to each part, and I'm happy to do that in a series. In fact, maybe I'll do that in a blog series, video blog series that I can do at the website. But starting a podcast takes time. And once it launches, you have to be invested in it, because otherwise, why would your audience be invested if you're not invested? I think that's the thing that kills me is, your audience is everything. And if you do not care about your audience, you're not going to get anywhere. But, listen to your audience, see what they have to say, show them you care, and try to do one a week. That's the best advice I can give you. Try to do one a week. Try to be consistent with it. I have to work on my own consistency as far as I'm concerned. But I want to thank people for tuning in. This was a offshoot of my normal deal, and excited to bring it to a Hangout on Air. And thank you for tuning in. I'll try to be back for a Sunday social on Meerkat next week, if Meerkat lets me. And thank you again for joining in. I'll see if I can post this on the website later. And otherwise, any questions, shoot me an email at cbarrows@gmail.com or at yasocial@gmail.com. You can tweet me at cbarrows or at yasocial. And thank you for listening.